Wi-Fi Sheep would like to say a huge thank you to all of you that kindly support us. Help us continue to bring new videos like this. Join patreon.com/Wi-Fi Sheep from just $1 a month. Hello and welcome back to youtube.com/Wi-Fi Sheep with me, Tom. Now, a large proportion of time here on Wi-Fi Sheep, we tend to focus on retro or vintage electronics or systems, such as Acorn BBC Micro or RISC-OS, for example. However, I do like to keep up to date on new tech from time to time, especially new affordable tech designed for the maker and hobbyist communities. So, things like RISC-V or RISC-V chipset architecture, for example. Now, RISC-V, which is in no way related to or compatible with RISC-OS, is a new 64-bit or higher open source license-free microprocessor chipset architecture, and is seen as an up-and-coming alternative to the more well-known ARM architecture. Both ARM and RISC-V are based around the reduced instruction set computing protocol, making them both ideal for low power and mobile computing applications. Until recently, RISC-V dev boards have been relatively expensive. That was until the MangoPi MQ PRO was released in early 2022. Coming in a Raspberry Pi Zero form factor. I paid about £30 for mine direct from China, although I believe the cost has dropped a little since then. The video is in no way endorsed or sponsored by MangoPi, so the opinion shared will be my own. So here is the MangoPi. This is the MangoPi MQ PH, and it is the 1GB of RAM version. I believe they do a 512MB version, but as this is a RISC-V or RISC-V 64-bit chipset, really in this day and age to run anything well, you need at least 1 gig. That's why I opted for the 1 gig version. Now, straight off the bat with these Chinese products, I've noticed this a lot recently with sort of Chinese dev boards and sort of Arduino clone boards, things like that, is they packaged them in these rather nice hard plastic shell cases. So this is actually how it arrived. If you actually contrast that with, I've got here Raspberry Pi Zero, and this is how the Pi Zeros come, just in these kind of like anti-static bags. So that's the difference. Let's take a look inside. So inside you've got the actual dev board itself inside a wrap top static bag. You've got a pin header. They actually provide you with the pin header, and you can see that the pin header has actually got the colour codes on it. I do like these headers. They've come out recently. Just to zoom in so you can have a better look at that. And you can see it's got the colour-coded header on it. Yeah, I quite like these. It makes life a little bit easier. So you can see where 5 volts, 3.3 ground, and I forget what the blue is, but the blue is something important. But yeah, so I quite like that. That's nice. And then we have here some adhesive stickers, which are upside down. There we go, with the MangoPi logo on. Right, let's have a look at the dev board itself. So we have the sticker, which we'll just unstick. And here is the main MangoPi dev board. Now, as you can see, it's in virtually an identical form factor to the Raspberry Pi Zero. In fact, let's get our Raspberry Pi Zero out just for contrast. So there is a Raspberry Pi Zero. That's the revision. Is that the revision 3? Revision 1.3 of the original Pi. And this is the MangoPi. So basically it's the same PCB form factor, apart from a few obvious modifications and alterations, mainly the use of USB connectors, which means that it's not going to be compatible with a lot of the Raspberry Pi Zero peripherals. A good example of this is the WaveShare board. Now, I showed this a few years ago now on a very popular video where we were testing if a Pi Zero could be used as a desktop. So, although in theory the pin out for this would be the same, so if I had my header fitted, you could fit that on there. What you can't do is easily connect the mini USB of the header board to the USB-C. I suppose you could via a cable or something, but basically all the adapters and stuff are not going to be directly compatible. So that's something to watch out for if you're thinking of using this as a drop-in replacement. The good news is that the HDMI has stayed the same standards. This is the mini HDMI as opposed to the micro used on the newer Raspberry Pi 4 and 400. So the MangoPi MQ PH uses the Allwinner D1 microprocessor. This is a RISC-V or RISC-V architecture chipset. It's a single core clocked to 1 gigahertz, that's 1000 megahertz, so like the Raspberry Pis before it. And this one, as I said at the beginning, has 1 gig of RAM on board. It also has a Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on board. We have a camera module here, ribbon camera module, micro SD card support, and of course we've got the unpopulated at this point header, which is compatible with the Raspberry Pi. Now, the reason this review has taken so long is that this board came out and there was actually no operating system for it, really, at all. Well, nothing usable. And that's extremely common with these sort of Chinese clone dev boards, is that they generally make the hardware, but the actual software support can sometimes be rather lacking. If I just show this, this is on mangopi.cc/D1. And this is the page for the Allwinner D1 hardware, and it gives a few PDFs and HTML schematics, etc. It also gives some firmware, what they're calling firmware, but basic download operating systems. And down here, right at the bottom, you've got MQ PRO D1H, and there's this download for something called Tina D1H MQ PRO overlay HTML Wi-Fi.zip. This is a very basic sort of operating system layer, and you can download it, but in order to flash it to a micro SD card, you can't just go through the normal channels of WinImager 32 or Berliner Etcher. You actually have to use the Allwinner toolset, which is here, TF card tool, and for Windows, it's Windows only, it's Phoenix card, which you can download here. Let me just show you this, which is a screenshot from Phoenix card from China of the options you need. So it's a Chinese operating system, Chinese chipset, Chinese manufactured board, and of course it's Chinese software. Luckily though, if you do actually download Phoenix card, which I did for Windows, you do actually need a Windows system, it does actually translate into English. It will appear as English, and the options for flashing it are relatively simple. What we end up with is, in this case, I've got a 16 gig micro SD card, which I flashed with this Tina Linux build, and that sits like there in the board. So we can plug HDMI in there, as we already discussed. Power, well, as it's USB-C, the only thing I found I've got that I can use is a Raspberry Pi 4 or 400 power supply. So we'll pop that into there. And of course, if we are going to use an OS, we may want mouse or keyboard. We're going to need to try and break those out from this port here. It just so happens that I actually have a USB-C hub, which converts it to standard A plugs. So we can plug that into there, and then we can plug a keyboard and mouse like so in there. HDMI, well, we've now gone from mini HDMI to standard. This is connected to a capture card, so we'll plug this in like so. There we go. And then we may want to tap a keyboard on the end if we're going to boot into Linux. So let's apply some power now and see what happens. So we have a green light here, and you can see pretty much, if we switch to video mode, you can see that whatever was going to happen has, well, happened. And yeah, that's fundamentally it. So this Tina OS, unless I'm missing something, that's kind of it. it kind of shows you an image of the sort of Linux penguin with a T, and there's no prompt, no kernel, nothing. So it's an operating system, and yes, it shows you that the board is working, but it does next to nothing as far as I can see. Unless, of course, I'm missing something, which I completely accept. I could well be, but yeah. Anyway, so I was basically delayed in being able to really show this board because I didn't really have much to show other than what you've just seen, which was disappointing. However, the other day, some other unofficial third-party operating systems started appearing. Now, bearing in mind, this D1 chip is not unique to this particular MangoPi product. It is used on other dev boards, which means that versions of Debian Linux, which is the same base OS that Raspberry Pi uses, started appearing. And one of them was a port of Armbian. If you're not aware of the Armbian project, it's kind of a third-party universal Linux operating system that's designed pretty much for everything. And I was going to say bar the Raspberry Pi, but they now have a version for the Raspberry Pi. But of course, Armbian is for the ARM chipset, not the RISC-V or RISC-V chipset. However, somebody has done a port, and I found this on a tech blog called Brett's Tech, and it's Armbian on the MangoPi MQ Pro. And the blog here talks about it, and there's actually a download for it. So you can run it in headless or with XFCE desktop. Now, I really do like XFCE. And there's two versions going here, and I went for the Jammy Current version, which downloaded this disk image. This disk image could actually be flashed using the normal method. My method is to use Bleaner Etcher, so I flashed it like it was a Raspberry Pi image. And what I've got is a second micro SD card. So we'll just power down. We'll take this card out. We'll pop this card in. So just plug a mouse in very quickly into my hub, which is just off camera. Here's the mouse, by the way. So let's power back up. Now, bearing in mind, this build is not exactly designed. It's not meant to run on this hardware. I think it's designed for some other dev board, but it is actually quite good. I've run it once to do the initial login and setup, which you do with any Armbian build. So we'll just see if this will go. There we go. It's a little slow getting going, but you can now see we have a Linux Debian kernel. Okay, there we are. We're just about loading in now. I'm not going to do a speed run on this because I'll be brutally honest with you, it's very slow to load. I've cut through some of this, but it's taken us a good bit of time to get here. There we are. We're just finishing loading in now. Yeah, it's slower. Dare I say it's slower than the original Raspberry Pi Zero? I think it could well be. But what we have to remember is this really is a sort of first generation of this RISC-V chipset. It's certainly the first that I think's been affordable. It's been around for about a year or two now. It is a brand new, very young architecture. Right, let's try if I can remember the password. So I set up in a user account called Cheap, because why not? And let's see if I can actually get into the desktop. So yes, there we go. Again, you can see it's not quick. So could you use this as a desktop daily driver? No, I think it's too slow. Saying that, when it does get going, it's not bad actually, to be completely fair. But I have to stress when it gets going. Now it's actually booted, because I've got a capture card in, it's booted to kind of the native resolution of the capture card, which means that unfortunately on the TV I'm looking at, all this has gone, top bar here has gone behind the overscan of the television, which it wasn't doing before when I plugged it straight through. So again, not perfect, but there we go, there's the desktop and we're loaded in. However, I have a secondary view that I can actually see what's going on off capture card. So This has some sort of test MP4 video file, which I believe is all in Russian or some sort of Eastern European language. This hackney OS, I think, well, definitely does originate out of Eastern Europe, possibly Russia. Anyway, so we're logged in. We've got 2 desktops going. It's found the Wi-Fi. I did add my Wi-Fi. Now, if you look at the Wi-Fi icon, you'll notice that it's of only half, kind of like full, if you like. It's only half signal. That's because the Wi-Fi on this actually requires an aerial. And if I just show you here, there's a little clip here for plugging in an external aerial. On some of the later Raspberry Pi Zeros, they actually had the aerial here actually as a track on the actual PCB itself, but that's not the case with the MangoPi board. Anyway, here is the desktop. So this is XFCE. Again, it's a little slow, but it's there. We've got a web browser. It's Dillo, which is one of these very, very simple systems which basically can't run anything. So for example, if I try www.wifisheep.co.uk, yeah, it sort of doesn't work. That's I don't think much works with this web browser. My website certainly doesn't, but you try that on anything else, it'll be absolutely fine other than this. But yeah, but internet there, as you can see, is in the most part actually working okay. So we can close that. We've got a file manager, as you'd expect for most Linux desktop systems. I mean, it's all right. It's probably no worse than the original Raspberry Pi. There's not really anything on this. And we can have a look at what we've got in the multimedia. So we've got, Pulse Audio, we've got an MP3 or MPV player, sorry. We've got Office. It's not, you'd have to install software. And it's also bearing in mind, because the architecture is so new, a lot of the software won't kind of be pre-compiled in any of the source libraries. So you will end up having to probably at the moment recompile quite a lot of the open source software to make it run. However, it should run perfectly fine in most cases. So I just want to have a look at the terminal. And again, this takes its sweet time. And let's just have a look at NeoFetch, which will give us the basic information. And you can see the resolution we're running at. So we are running at a full 1080 resolution. Memory, so yeah, just clocking in there at just under the 1 gig of available RAM, and a single core CPU, which is probably half the problem why this is actually quite slow, is it's running on a single core, which yeah, probably explains a fair bit. But saying that, it's not too bad, although we're not really doing anything that heavy with it. It's probably also worth noting that things like Nano are present as well, so all your kind of normal stuff that you'd expect is on the system. The settings under Armbian are quite comprehensive these days. I did have an issue, of it hasn't cropped up today, where the mouse driver kept kind of clicking in and out, so I didn't get mice loading up properly, and I kind of, the minute you plug the second mouse in, it kind of sprung back into life, but it's not doing that today, so I don't know if it's a slight glitch in the system. If we just have a look at mouse and trackpad. And yeah, this gives you kind of the options to set behaviors, and also what mouse you're using, but that's nothing to do with this actual hardware. That's just generic to this operating system. Now, one thing I will sort of finally end with is I'm just going to show you the shutdown procedure, because there's a bit of a glitch, and I think it's due to the fact this OS is not designed to run on this particular board. So if we shut down, we get the kernel, which is sort of stopping everything, which is kind of as you'd expect. Unmounting everything, so it's kind of packing up everything safely. And then it kind of stops there and glitches out. So I believe it has now shut down, but even in the notes on the website, it said that an image is left on the screen. I'm assuming the image is in meaning the kernel here. Then yeah, so I believe that might be shut down. There's still a light here, which is for power. But yeah, so I think that is probably shut down. I have just pulled the power out at this point, and I've never had a problem before. It's not corrupted the SD card or anything, so it's been relatively stable, to be fair, minor these few glitches. Again, can't really recommend this at the moment as a replacement if you're going to try and run it as a daily driver for a desktop. But saying that, if you are trying to get hold of the Raspberry Pi Zeros, be it the originals or the later revision 2s, and version 2, and you can't, because at the moment the chipset shortages have been horrendous. Also, remember, when these things first came out, the Raspberry Pi versions, Pi Foundation artificially throttled sales, so you could only ever buy one at a time kind of thing. As at the time of recording, these in both formats have gone completely, you can't get them anywhere. It's quite possible that the MangoPi MQ PRO might be a good drop-in replacement, depending on what it is you're actually needing to use the Pi Zero form factor for. So there we are, the MangoPi MQ PRO. Not too bad, but a little slow, and leaning quite heavily on unofficial third-party support. If you're interested in RISC-V, then this ain't a bad place to start. Plus, I have heard rumours that the Raspberry Pi 5 might ditch ARM architecture in favour of a custom RISC-V based chipset, so definitely one to watch. Before I go, I just want to say a huge thank you to the patrons and YouTube channel members that support this channel and allow these brilliant projects and channel content to happen. So a huge thank you, in no particular order, to Mike O'Neill, George F. Rozanki, Gildo Zeggastra, Danny Geesons, Alexandra Smith, Laura, Anthony Bartram, Daniel Broom, David Taylor, Retro Markey, Conrad Pitchard, Philip Groves, and Robert Diggle. If you want to join them in directly supporting independent content creation here on Wi-Fi Sheep, you can by joining our Patrons by visiting patreon.com/Wi-Fi Sheep, or alternatively, you can now also support us directly through YouTube by becoming a YouTube channel member. Click the join button below this video or see links in the description. And once again, thank you so much for your continued support. If you've not done so already, please do consider liking and subscribing to us here on Wi-Fi Sheep, and I will see you real soon right here on the channel. Until next time, thanks so much for your company, and bye for now.